Harbinger Interactive Learning is a global design and development company with over 25 years of experience in delivering innovative learning solutions. I'm Sonia Deshpande, a senior instructional designer with over 8 years of experience in the e-learning field. I will be hosting and moderating today's session. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Hopefully everyone can see the screen and hear me. If not, here are some useful tips. We will be having a question and answer session at the end, and we would like to hear from you. So do ask us questions and share your comments. You can do this by using the questions panel at the right side of your GoToWebinar box. I'd like to tell everyone that the session is being recorded, and we'd like to make a link available to everyone at the end of the webinar. With that, we hope you really enjoyed today's webinar. Let's quickly go over what we can expect in today's webinar. Let's begin with what you would need to do if you're getting started in e-learning. We will talk a little bit about what end-to-end support means. We will go over how you can repurpose your existing training material. And finally, we will give you a brief sample of the e-learning process. With that, we'll welcome today's presenter, Mr. Rahul Singh. Rahul is a Senior Manager of Business Development at Harbinger Interactive Learning. Rahul comes with an extensive experience of 10 years in the field of e-learning and has worked closely with Fortune 500 and Global 1000 companies in establishing e-learning as a delivery mode for training. So welcome, Rahul, and without further ado, I turn over the session to you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. A very warm welcome to all the attendees of this webinar. Before we get started, I wanted to request the audience to participate in a quick poll. The question for the poll is, are you using e-learning for training your employees? And you have 3 options to choose from. So we would request the audience to select their options from the poll. We'll keep this poll open for 30 seconds, and then we'll look at the responses and move forward. So I hope you have the poll question in front of you and the 3 options, and you can select your response there. Okay, we are getting some good responses there. The time is ticking away. Okay, right, so we are done with the poll, and let's see what the results are. So the audience says that 100% of the people have utilized e-learning in some or the other forms as a training mode for their employees. That's very good. That sets the agenda for our conversation. And now let's get moving ahead. So what are the key takeaways from this webinar? What you can expect from this webinar is, at the end of this webinar, you will be able to identify the key components that you need to get started. What are the options available for you? Buy versus build decisions, a well-defined process to get started, and a mechanism to evaluate success of your e-learning initiative. The first thing that we look at is the various components that we need to get started. Primarily, there are 3 key components. On your screen, as it displays, the training needs analysis is the first one. Setting up the technology infrastructure is the second one, and interactive content is the third piece. And these 3 components need to be coupled with end-to-end support throughout the entire process. Now let's see what training needs analysis means. Training needs analysis basically is a process for identifying skill gaps in employee training needs, and it is usually performed by experienced e-learning, learning and development consultants. It also helps define what the business needs to do to achieve its goals. If we had to identify the key steps in the needs analysis process, we would say these are the 5 key steps on your screen. First is defining the business goals. What are the objectives that you're trying to achieve? The second is identifying the skill gaps in your employees. What are the areas wherein they need more learning and development support? The third is looking at what you already have, your existing legacy training material. Based on this analysis, then you recommend the training solutions, and the last piece of it is implementing the recommended training solutions. Now let's look at the second component, which is setting up the technology infrastructure. For e-learning, basically it boils down to setting up the learning management system where you can host, manage, and track your learners' performance, courses, etc. Over here you have a choice of going with an off-the-shelf product which is readily available in the market, or going with a customized learning management system. As a food for thought, some names over here from off-the-shelf learning management systems are Cornerstone On Demand, Skillsoft, and some of the customized learning management solution options are Moodle, Drupal, Joomla. Now we get to the important piece, that is the interactive content. In the interactive content, you'll again get a choice point where you can decide to buy versus build. If you were to buy, you have the options of going with ready-to-use courses from catalog companies. Some of the names that you can think about is Udemy, Coursera, lynda.com, which will have ready-to-use courses available for you. And then you have the build option. And within the build option, there are another 2 choice points that you have. One is you can do this internally, or you can utilize an experienced e-learning development partner, someone like Harbinger Interactive Learning. Now let's take a deep dive into the e-learning development process if we are going for the build process. Basically, the process would start, the first step would be to identify a subject matter expert. A subject matter expert who is willing to walk the path with you in terms of designing, helping you in designing and developing the e-learning solution, and is open to technology, using technology as an enabling tool for your learners, your employees. The second step is identifying a few topics. The recommendation is we go lean, or we do it in bits and pieces. So we identify a few topics rather than identifying a lot of topics together at the same time. Once you have identified a few key topics, the third key step is to define the success matrix. For example, let's say if you have chosen onboarding program for your new employees, new hires as one of the key topics, then some of the success parameters or metrics could be, after rolling out the e-learning, has the performance increased, or the time that an employee takes to get productive, get on the shop floor and do their regular day-to-day job, does that reduces after after putting e-learning in place? Then once you have put this success matrix in place, then comes the e-learning and the actual development process. And the recommendation over here is we go with the ADDIE model for development. ADDIE primarily means analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. Since in the manufacturing domain, one of the reasons why we do not advise agile methodology over here is because a lot of things would be structured. You will have some raw input material. You would have identified the key topics. So ADDIE is the most proven development method over here. Then once you have gone through the ADDIE phase, you will deploy the e-learning solution. And one of the key things over here to do is to gather learner feedback, to evaluate the learner's performance, measure the learner's performance, measure your e-learning solutions against the success matrix that you had defined initially. And based on the learner feedback, you need to invest, you need to take a decision how much and where and when do you want to invest more in e-learning. So this was about the e-learning development process. And we also spoke about the end-to-end support. So what kind of end-to-end support would you require? Some of these things could be done, again, you'll have a choice point of some of these things could be done internally, or some of these things could be done by a partner. So the first step is to conducting the needs analysis. Then if you're going for a build option in the platform, then develop a platform, deploy a platform, develop your interactive content, then constant maintenance of your LMS and courses, making updates to the LMS courses, providing administrator support, which primarily revolves around enrolling your users, uploading your courses, assigning those courses to the users, and providing user support. For example, if you have multiple office locations and your users are at various geographical locations, they might require support while they are doing the e-learning at their own pace, at their own time and convenience. So that is the last piece of the end-to-end support, is the user support. Now let's talk about a little bit about repurposing your existing training material. So you already might have some of these materials available, and e-learning could help you in repurposing this existing material and presenting the content to a learner in a more interactive and engaging manner. Some of these existing training materials could be your instructor-led trainings, your classroom trainings, PowerPoint presentations, the product manuals and brochures that you might have in a static PDF formats, the job aids that you would have on the shop floors as a performance support tools, then the standard operating procedures or the basic operating procedures documents, the technical documentation that you would have around your products, 3D drawings, and at the end of it, the informal training, the peer-to-peer training, the what one employee learns from another employee. So all this training material, your existing training material, this is your legacy content, could be converted into interactive and engaging e-learning experience. Now, I think it's a good point at a stage to show you a sample of how this entire process works of e-learning development. So in this sample, we are going to show you some existing input material, the raw input material, then how the instructional designers came into picture to structure the content instructionally and put it together in a storyboard format, which is the first step in the development process. And then eventually taking that storyboard and developing an interactive e-learning example out of it. So just give me a moment while I pull out the samples for you and showcase that to you. Right, so the first thing that we are going to look at is the raw input material. So it's coming up on your screen now. This raw input material could be in various formats. The current one that I'm showing you is a PowerPoint format, but this could be a Word document, an Excel, a PDF, or a combination of all these things. So this is how the raw input material looked like. This is the total productive maintenance training component. So as you can see, these are static slides with a little bit of some very simplistic animations into it, very text heavy. Okay, so now we have seen the raw input material. Now let me go back and show you once the instructional designers came into picture, what they did with this raw input material and how they created a storyboard. So I'll show you a sample of a storyboard. A storyboard basically is, those who are not familiar with this term, a storyboard is basically a blueprint of your actual e-learning course, how it will look like. So there's a version history. Then as you can see on this storyboard, there are various components for the subject matter expert or the reviewers to review. So you'll have the course name, the topic name, the page number. It's basically a page-by-page breakup of your e-learning course, and the storyboarding phase allows you to collaborate and achieve the best possible learning objectives that you want to achieve before getting into the development phase. You'll have images, graphics, all the things which make you help visualize how your e-learning course would look like and what kind of learning objectives will this achieve. So now we have taken a look at the storyboard. Now let me show you the final output, the final course that was developed out of this. So now on our screens, we have the final course. I'll just play it for you. So as you can see, this is a mentor-driven course. So there is an instructor or a mentor who will take the learner through this course. The first section was the course overview. Now it's about setting the context for the learner, explaining them what total productive maintenance means. Then we move ahead in the course. What are the main objectives of TPM, or what are the learning objectives that we are going to achieve out of this? Then the course will have knowledge checks after subsequent modules. These knowledge checks are to reinforce the learning. This is an example of a typical drag and drop interactivity. So you get a feedback if you do it incorrectly, and you get a chance to continue, do it again. At the end of the course, we'll have a summary screen which will summarize the learning. And then after the summary screen, we will have the assessment, which will be the scored assessment. And these are typical business rules which are written as per the client's requirements. So we can set up the number of questions that we want to have, the passing score, the percentage that we want to achieve. So those kind of business rules, specific rules for this one. The passing score is you have to correctly answer 4 questions out of 7, and the learner will get 2 attempts to answer the questions. So this was one example of an interactive e-learning course. I hope the audience would have liked this.
Thank you so much, Rahul. We'll go ahead and take some questions now. Just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel. So just wait for a couple of seconds for some questions to come in. Okay, so we'll start with our first question here. So we have a question here asking us, how many weeks does it take to get one e-learning module developed?
Okay, so basically it revolves around the seed time of the course. Are we trying to develop a 30-minute course or a 1-hour e-learning course? And it also depends upon the interactivity level or the complexity level of the course. Are we doing a simple standard level 1 course or a highly interactive engaging level 3 or level 4 course? But just to set some expectations and ballpark numbers, a typical 30-minute course, if we go the middle route to 2.5 level complexity, and it will take around 4 to 6 weeks.
Great. Thanks so much, Rahul, for that. Here we have another interesting question. Anna asks us that in manufacturing, we have very highly technical content. So how do you handle it if you don't have technical expertise or background?
So this e-learning development process is entirely a very collaborative process, and that is why when we spoke about the process, the first step was identifying a subject matter expert. So the subject matter expertise comes from the client's side, a person who knows and understands the content, the technical aspect of the content. And then the second piece to this is our instructional design competency. The instructional designers, in collaboration with the subject matter experts, work on the storyboard and the design part of the course.
So Rahul, there's a question related to that. Somebody wants to know what is the process that happens from when they give you the PPT to when you see the final course. What's the process which happens?
Right, thank you. That's a very valid question to put things in perspective. So once we get the raw input material, then we do the content analysis part. Our instructional designers will do the content analysis part. In the analysis phase, they'll try and understand who the target audience is, what are the learning objectives, what are the business objectives that we are trying to achieve through this training program, what are the target devices, what are the expectations of the client stakeholders from those courses. These kind of questions get answered during the analysis phase. Once we have done the analysis phase and we have kind of zeroed down on the scope, then we get into the storyboarding phase. The storyboard is the phase wherein we develop a blueprint of your actual e-learning course, a page-by-page breakup of how your e-learning course would look like in terms of graphic design, visual design, instructional design, the language, on-screen text, the voiceover, all those components. This storyboard goes through a couple of iterations and review process at the client's end. The client stakeholders and the subject matter experts will sign off on the storyboard. Once the storyboard is signed off, then the development process starts. So all the media assets would get developed. So the visual design, the graphic design part, based on the branding guidelines, the graphic user interface, the voiceover, the animations, all these things will be worked out, will be developed, and then they will be integrated, put together in a wrapper, in a package. It needs to be hosted on an LMS and needs tracking, so it will be put in a SCORM package. Then it will go through rigorous quality assurance testing and usability testing. Once this is done, then the final product is delivered to the client, which is ready to be hosted on the learning management system and rolled out to the learners. And during this development process, you'll have 2 or 3 checkpoints depending upon the business requirements, which we typically call the alpha build, the beta build, and the final build. During these checkpoints, there is a scope for the client reviews and signs off, and we move ahead in the process.
Thank you, Rahul, for that. We have another question coming in. Michael asks, do you have any recommendations for authoring courses that need to be delivered in several languages?
Right, Michael, thank you very much for bringing this question up. So yes, in the manufacturing domain, one of the key things is that we have experienced is because your workforce is global and you're not just based out of one geography or one language, you're not limited to one language. So there's always a need of localizing the courses, making these courses standardized and getting it delivered at various geographical locations. And yes, there are several ways, or in fact, I would say there are multiple ways through which the courses can be designed at the design phase. If there is a localization requirement, we can use an architecture which simplifies the process of using the existing English language courses and localizing them in various languages. Basically, it's an XML environment that we use to export the, to do the localization part. And this XML thing can be used with your tool-based development, for example, Articulate Storyline 1 and 2, or this could be used in custom HTML5 environment as well.
Hope that answers your question. Rahul, I see there are 2 more questions about LMS, so I'm going to club them together for you. So the question is, if somebody is selecting an LMS, should they go for an off-the-shelf LMS or a customized LMS?
Okay, so the answer to this question is basically dependent upon what your business needs and objectives are. For the purpose of this discussion, I can throw some light on the pros and cons of going for an off-the-shelf or custom-built Moodle, custom-built learning management system. If you have a workforce which is spread globally, in multiple countries, and the numbers are huge, then you might want to go for an off-the-shelf product wherein the deployment is faster and easier. In terms of small and medium enterprises, a customized Moodle or a learning management system, something like a customized Moodle could be a faster way because you can get that rolled out very fast and conveniently. It would not have all the bells and whistles because at the end of the day, the off-the-shelf products are where you have limited scope or maybe at times no scope of customizing them. So even in case if you do not want some of those additional features, you might end up paying for them. So it's end of the day, it's a business decision or a business call depending upon what kind of target audience and requirements that you have. You might have to choose between these.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Rahul. Here we have another great question. Robert says he's been hearing a lot about gamification and user videos. So his question is, should he go with these or would it be better to start with a simple course? What would you recommend?
Okay, that's another interesting question. Thank you for asking this. So in this case, if you're initiating e-learning or you're in the early phases of the e-learning, then the decision could be the pilot rollout or the pilot programs that you do could be of a little bit simplistic level, and then based on the user engagement and the user feedback that you gather from the pilot rollout, then you might want to get into the gamification, or there could be a middle path wherein you do the simplistic courses with a little bit of gamification elements thrown into it. For example, your onboarding programs could have some sort of gamification elements wherein the learners who are completing the modules and completing the assessments, passing the assessments, they could get badges. Your health and safety courses, so if someone has cleared and completed and has got the passing certificate on a particular health and safety course, so that person gets a badge of X and Y health and safety course champion, these kind of things.
Gamification is coming to e-learning. Rahul, I have another question here. It's to do with ILTs. So this person asked me that there's a lot of ILTs in their organization, and they're wondering if e-learning is really the way forward.
Yes, definitely. ILT will remain there as a training mode. E-learning in no ways will replace ILT, but the way we have to look at it is there are certain training programs which can be done in a blended learning environment. Some portion of it remains in the classrooms, some portion of it goes online. For example, maybe in the initial phases, the hands-on training that your service crew professionals or technicians might be doing, that still remains in the classroom environment. But your basic conceptual training, building the concept or building some basic competencies in your service crew or technician level professionals, those could go online. So to answer in short, blended learning could be the solution.
I suppose that's a good way to start having a solution which combines ILT and e-learning. Rahul, I have another question for you about the sample you shared. Now, Jeff wants to know how it was created. Could you elaborate on that? Was it using a tool? What did you do? So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So this was created using a rapid authoring tool called Articulate Storyline 1. And Articulate Storyline 1 gives you the option of publishing it into Flash and HTML5 both. So this specific client had needs, the target devices included the iPads and tablets, not the smartphones, but the desktops, laptops, and iPads and tablets, including Windows and Mac operating systems. So we went ahead with Articulate Storyline 1 as the preferred development tool with an HTML5 output. And one of the other reasons why we chose Articulate Storyline 1 is because this course had localization requirement, and the process is relatively faster using the XML technology to localize the courses developed in Articulate Storyline.
Okay, that was interesting. I hope that's answered your question. I think we have time for a couple of more questions. There's a question about this SME involvement. So once the raw content is given to you, how much involvement do you you need from the SME? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So Basically, the SME involvement, again, there are multiple factors based on which the SME involvement will revolve around. For example, if it's a health and safety or a compliance course, the SME involvement might be relatively lower as compared to when we are developing courses around technician training or preventive equipment maintenance or equipment handling training, the core mechanical stuff, if I might say. So depending upon the topic, the complexity of the topic, the SME requirement will vary.
That's good to know. Sorry, I'm just taking a look to see if we have any more questions. Give me 1 second, just scrolling down. Just give me 1 second, Rahul. Just would like everyone to take a minute. If there are any more questions, this would be a good time to write into us.